Before we get into the video, could everyone please subscribe to my Endless Diary Tales channel? Thank you so much. I never imagined that one day my own home, the one my grandparents had left me, would feel like anything but mine. But when Ryan brought his parents into our house without even asking me, I didn't know whether to feel shock or rage. This wasn't just a house. It was my safe place, my sanctuary, the place where I wanted to raise our son Lucas without interference. But now it felt like I was being pushed into the background, my voice ignored. I stood in the living room, staring at Ryan in disbelief as he sat there casually scrolling through his laptop, completely unfazed by what he had just done. When he finally looked up, there was that smirk, the one I had grown to hate. "Oh, Olivia, it's not a big deal. It's just for a little while," he said dismissively, as if his words were enough to erase the frustration bubbling inside me. "For a little while?" I repeated, my voice sharp. "You didn't even ask me, Ryan. This house is in my name." For the first time, I saw a flicker of uncertainty cross his face, but it was gone in an instant, replaced with his usual indifference. He shrugged. "The house is mine too, and their family. You wouldn't understand family." The word stung. My family was nothing like his. We ran a small coffee shop, a place filled with warmth and love where respect mattered. Ryan's parents, Elaine and her husband, their version of family was about control and dominance. At that moment, Lucas came toddling into the room, his tiny hands reaching for me. I picked him up, pressing a kiss to his forehead, and for a brief second I pushed everything aside. If I was going to endure this, it would only be for him. But my resolve didn't make it any easier when the doorbell rang. I peered through the peephole and my stomach dropped. There they were, Elaine and her husband, standing outside with their suitcases, ready to invade my life. Taking a deep breath, I opened the door. "Olivia, darling," Elaine said with a practiced smile, sweeping into the house without waiting for an invitation. Her husband followed, barely acknowledging me, his presence just as cold as ever. The intrusion was immediate. It was suffocating, and it was only the beginning. The changes started almost immediately. Elaine took over my kitchen, rearranging everything like she owned the place. The first morning, as I made cereal for Lucas, she stood behind me, arms crossed. "Lucas shouldn't be eating that," she said, her tone dripping with judgment. I clenched my jaw. "It's just cereal, Elaine." She gave a small, condescending laugh. "In our house, we believe in a proper diet." I felt like a child being scolded in my own home. Every day was another jab. Another reminder that I was doing something wrong. Ryan hid behind his work, acting as if none of this was happening. Whenever I confronted him, he dismissed me with a wave of his hand. "Olivia, you're overreacting." That was his favorite excuse. One night, as I tucked Lucas into bed, Elaine barged into his room. "He's still not sleeping through the night," she scoffed. "You must." Something wrong, that was the final straw. I was doing my best, but I snapped, no longer caring to hold back my frustration. Elaine narrowed her eyes. "Clearly your best isn't good enough. Maybe if you had a real job, you'd have some structure in your life." I felt my entire body tense. "This is my house, Elaine. You are a guest here, don't forget that." She laughed a cold, dismissive laugh. "Oh, sweetie. Ryan never mentioned how delusional you are. This is his house too, and as his mother, I have every right to be here." That night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, something inside me shifted. I had spent too long being quiet, too long letting them walk all over me. But that was about to change. Elaine's presence in my home was like an unrelenting storm. Constant, suffocating, and impossible to ignore. What started with small interferences had now turned into complete control. She dictated how things should be arranged, what food should be cooked, and worst of all, how I should raise my own son. One morning, as I fed Lucas his breakfast, she sat across from me with her usual disapproving stare. "You should stop letting him eat this processed junk," she remarked, watching as I spooned oatmeal into Lucas's tiny mouth. I let out a slow breath. "It's oatmeal, Elaine, not candy." She shook her head as if I was too ignorant to understand basic parenting. A real mother would know better. The words hit me like a slap, but before I could respond, Ryan walked into the kitchen, completely oblivious, or maybe deliberately ignorant to the tension. "Morning," he muttered, pouring himself a coffee. I shot him a look, willing him to see how his mother's words were tearing me down. But as always, he was deaf to my struggles. Elaine wasn't just trying to take over my household. She was trying to replace me in my own son's life. It got worse. I had a strict bedtime routine for Lucas. Every night I'd tuck him in, read him a story, and kiss him goodnight. But Elaine had no respect for boundaries. One night, just as I was about to put Lucas to bed, she barged in. "He's still not sleeping through the night," she scoffed. "You must be doing something wrong." I turned to face her, gripping the edge of Lucas's crib to keep myself from screaming. "I am doing my best," I said, my voice shaking. She folded her arms. "Clearly your best isn't enough. Maybe if you had a real job, you'd have some structure in your life." That did it. I clenched my fists. "This is my house, Elaine. You are a guest here, don't forget that." She smirked. "Oh, sweetie. Ryan never mentioned how delusional you are. This is his house too, and as his mother, I have every right to be here." I was done. The next morning, I walked into Lucas's room to find Elaine going through his drawers. My stomach turned. "What are you doing?" I demanded, my voice trembling with rage. Elaine barely glanced up.
"I'm organizing."
"This place is a mess." Something inside me snapped. "That's it. I want you out of my house now." Elaine turned to me, raising an eyebrow like I was a child. "I'll throwing a tantrum in your house." "Oh darling, you're just the wife. This is Ryan's house too, and he wants us here." I stormed out of the room, my mind racing. I had let this go on for too long. I had tried to be patient, tried to compromise, but Ryan had left me no choice. I needed to confront him. That night, as we sat at the dinner table, the tension between me and Elaine was thicker than ever. I barely touched my food. My fingers curled into my lap as I waited for the right moment. Then Ryan, in his usual careless manner, dropped a bombshell. "My parents need to stay longer. Their house renovations are taking longer than expected," he said, as if it was the most natural thing in the world. My blood boiled. "Longer?" I said through gritted teeth. "We never even discussed them staying in the first place." He shrugged, avoiding my gaze. "It's just a few more weeks. What's the big deal?" I let out a sharp laugh. "The big deal is that your mother treats me like an intruder in my own home. The big deal is that she has no respect for me as a mother, as a wife, or as a human being." Elaine, who had been listening, chimed in with her usual condescending tone. "Olivia, you're overreacting. We're family. You should be more accommodating." I turned to Ryan, my voice laced with anger. "And you're just going to sit there and let her talk to me like this?" Ryan sighed, rubbing his temples. "Olivia, stop making a scene." That was it. I pushed back my chair, standing up so fast that the legs screeched against the floor. "You know what, Ryan? I'm done. Either they leave or I do." A heavy silence fell over the room. Ryan finally looked up at me, his face unreadable, but then, as expected, he just sighed and shook his head. "You're being dramatic." I swallowed back the lump in my throat. He wasn't going to fight for me. He never had. But I wasn't going to let them destroy me. That night, as I lay in bed, I realized something. This was war, and I was ready to fight back. Sitting alone in the dimly lit living room, I felt the weight of my exhaustion settle over me like a thick blanket. I was done feeling powerless, done watching my own home slip through my fingers. I needed help, someone who would actually listen, and I knew exactly who to call. I grabbed my phone and dialed my brother Alex. "Hey Olivia," he answered almost immediately, his voice warm and familiar. "You okay?" The moment I heard his voice, the floodgates opened. I told him everything. How Ryan had invited his parents without asking me, how Elaine had taken over my home, criticized my parenting, and acted like I was nothing more than a guest in my own life. "Olivia," Alex's voice turned sharp, protective. "Why are you letting them treat you like this?" "I don't know," I whispered, my throat tightening. I don't know how to make it stop." "Yes, you do," he countered. "You're stronger than this. You've always been stronger than this. They're walking all over you because you're letting them. You need to stand up for yourself or they'll never stop." I wiped at but what if Ryan doesn't take my side? Alex sighed. "Then you'll have your answer about where you stand in this marriage." His words hit hard because deep down I already knew Ryan had never taken my side. I took a shaky breath. "I need to end this." "Good," Alex said firmly. Now make a plan and stick to it. That night, I started collecting proof of Elaine's manipulation and control. I took pictures of the kitchen, which she had completely rearranged without my permission. I recorded snippets of her belittling comments about how I was just a wife and how I needed to learn how a real mother raises a child. I even took note of how she'd interfered in Lucas's routine, walking into his room without knocking, treating me like I was incapable of taking care of my own son. I wasn't just going to tell Ryan how bad it was, I was going to show him. The next evening, I waited until Ryan and Elaine were both in the living room. My heart pounded as I stepped forward, my hands clenched at my sides. "We need to talk," I announced, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. Ryan looked up from his laptop, frowning. "What now, Olivia?" I ignored his exasperation and turned to Elaine, who sat on the couch, her usual air of entitlement thick around her. "This has gone on long enough." Elaine scoffed, crossing her arms. "What on earth are you talking about?" I pulled out my phone and started listing everything out. The comments, the interference, the way she treated me like an outsider in my own home. I played a few of the recordings, letting her own words echo back at her. Ryan shifted uncomfortably. "Olivia, this is ridiculous." "No, Ryan," I snapped. "What's ridiculous is the fact that I've let this go on for so long. Your mother treats me like I'm nothing and you just let her. This stops now." Elaine rolled her eyes. "You're being dramatic, dear. You're just a wife. You don't make the decisions here." I turned to Ryan, my pulse hammering. "Then let's make it clear. Either they leave or I do." Ryan's eyes widened. "What?" "You heard me," I said, my voice unwavering. "I refuse to live like this anymore. So either they pack their bags tonight or I'll pack mine and I'll take Lucas with me." Ryan looked at me like I had slapped him. "You're really going to break up this family over a little disagreement?" I let out a bitter laugh. "Family? A real family doesn't let one person be humiliated and disrespected every single day." Elaine leaned back, smirking. "Oh please, you're not going anywhere. You don't have the guts." I met her gaze, steel in my voice. "Watch me." The room went silent. Ryan ran a hand through his hair, looking from me to his mother and back again. I could see the gears turning in his head, the realization finally sinking in. I wasn't backing down and he knew it. An hour later, Elaine and her husband were packing their bags. Elaine's face was tight with anger as she pulled her suitcase toward the door. "You'll regret this, Olivia," she spat. I crossed my arms.
No, Elaine.
"I regret not doing this sooner." With one last glare, she walked out, her husband trailing behind her. Ryan stood in the middle of the room, still stunned. "I can't believe you did this." I met his gaze unflinching. "Believe it, Ryan." For the first time in a long time, I felt something I had forgotten control. And I wasn't letting it go ever again. After Ryan's parents left, I expected some sort of shift in our marriage, maybe tension, maybe a fight, maybe even an apology. But instead, Ryan became even colder, more distant, as if I was the one who had crossed the line. He barely spoke to me, and when he did, his words were short and indifferent. Gone were the fake smiles and the half-hearted reassurances. Now he acted as if I didn't exist. I didn't care. For the first time in years, I felt like I had taken back a piece of my life, and I refused to let his brooding presence steal that from me. One evening, as I was putting Lucas to bed, Ryan walked into the room. His suitcase was packed, and he had his phone tucked under his arm. "I have a business trip," he announced casually, not even looking at me. "I'll be gone for a few weeks." I stared at him for a moment, waiting for an explanation. He didn't offer one. "Fine, all right," I said, my voice devoid of emotion. He left without another word, and for the first time in weeks, the house felt peaceful. With Ryan gone, I focused on reclaiming my space. I put everything back in order. The kitchen, Lucas's room, even my own routine. Each small change felt like a victory. Then one night, as I was tidying up the living room, I noticed Ryan's laptop sitting on the coffee table. He had forgotten to close it before he left. Normally, I wouldn't have cared, but something, maybe intuition, maybe sheer exhaustion from his constant indifference, pushed me to open it. The moment I clicked on his email, my heart sank. There it was. A string of messages from a woman named Sophie. "I miss you already. Last night was amazing. I can't wait for you to come back. Wish I could kiss you right now. I felt my stomach twist, my hands trembling as I scrolled through weeks, months of messages, photos, hotel receipts. He wasn't just distant, he was cheating on me. For a long time I just sat there staring at the screen. A part of me had always known Ryan wasn't the man I thought he was. The red flags had been there for years. The dismissiveness, the gaslighting, the way he always put his family above me. But this was beyond anything I had prepared myself for. I wanted to scream, to break something, to call him and demand answers. But then, just as quickly as the anger came, something else replaced it. Clarity. I wasn't going to waste my breath yelling at a man who had already betrayed me. No, I was going to make sure he paid for it. The next morning I called a lawyer. I need to start divorce proceedings, I said, gripping the phone so tightly that my knuckles turned white. The lawyer, a woman named Claire, was calm and reassuring. She walked me through everything, what I needed, what my rights were, and most importantly, how to protect myself legally and financially. Do you have access to the house's paperwork? She asked. I swallowed. Yes, it's in my name. She exhaled in relief. Good, that gives you control. Control, the very thing I had been denied in my own marriage, the very thing I was about to take back. The next step was the house. I wasn't going to wait for Ryan to return and twist things in his favor. I needed to act fast. I called a real estate agent the very same day. I want to sell my house, I told her quickly and quietly. She hesitated. Are you sure? This is a big decision. I've never been more sure of anything, I said firmly. Within days, offers started coming in. The market was good. And with the house fully in my name, there was nothing stopping me. I was taking control of my life piece by piece. And when Ryan returned, he was going to walk into a nightmare of his own making. The night Ryan returned, I was ready. I had imagined this moment 100 times. How he would react, the words he would try to twist, the excuses he would make. But none of it mattered. I wasn't the same woman he had left behind. I stood in the living room, arms crossed, as I heard his key turn in the lock. The door swung open, and there he was, tired, disheveled, and completely unaware that his entire world was about to come crashing down. Olivia, I'm home, he called out, setting his bag down. I stepped forward. We need to talk. Something in my voice made him pause. He turned to look at me, frowning. What's going on? I took a deep breath, then said the words that would shatter his illusion of control. I sold the house, Ryan. It's no longer ours. His face twisted in confusion. What? That's not possible. I didn't flinch. It is. The house was in my name. It's done. The color drained from his face. You sold our house without telling me? I let out a bitter laugh. You mean the house that I own? The one you decided wasn't mine when your parents were walking all over me? Ryan blinked, trying to process what I was saying, but I didn't stop. There's more, I continued. I know about the affair. His mouth opened slightly, like he wanted to deny it, but he must have seen the fire in my eyes, the unwavering, unforgiving certainty, because he didn't even try. Instead, he scoffed. So what? You go through my emails and suddenly think you're the victim? I took a step closer, my voice steady. No, Ryan, I know I'm the victim, but not anymore. I've already filed for divorce. Now the shock hit him like a truck. You what? I filed for divorce, I repeated, tossing the papers onto the coffee table. And I'm getting full custody of Lucas. His hands curled into fists. You can't do this. I tilted my head. I already have. For the first time, Ryan looked scared. Not angry, not indifferent, scared because he finally understood that I wasn't bluffing. He tried to regain control, his voice dropping into the same manipulative tone he had always used to gaslight me. Come on, Olivia, let's be reasonable. We can fix this. You don't have to do something so drastic. I didn't even blink. You didn't think about that when you were sleeping with another woman. His jaw clenched. I made a mistake. I leaned forward, my voice ice cold. So did I. I married you. His face twisted with fury, but before he could say another word, the door swung open again, and there they were, Elaine and her husband. Perfect timing. Elaine's smug expression faltered the second she saw Ryan's face and the tension in the room. What's going on? She demanded. I turned to her with a small victorious smile. Oh, Elaine, didn't Ryan tell you? Your perfect son has been having an affair. Elaine blinked rapidly, looking at Ryan, expecting him to deny it, but he didn't. And that's when the humiliation sank in. All those years of looking down on me, of treating me like I was nothing, only to find out her son was the disgrace. Her lips parted as if she wanted to say something. Maybe blame me, maybe defend him, but for once she had no words. I relished the silence. The divorce proceedings were brutal, but I had the upper hand. The judge took one look at the evidence: Ryan's affair, his neglect, his inability to provide stability, and ruled in my favor: full custody of Lucas. Elaine and her husband sat in the courtroom, their faces stone cold, unable to process how quickly their world had crumbled. Ryan tried to fight it, but his case was weak, built on years of entitlement and nothing else. When the final verdict was read, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: freedom. Outside the courthouse, Ryan tried one last time. "Olivia, wait," he called, his voice raw and desperate. I turned to face him, watching as he struggled to find the right words. "I lost my job," he admitted, his shoulders sagging. "The scandal ruined my reputation. I have nothing left." I stared at him for a long moment. This was the man who had spent years dismissing me, belittling me, making me feel like I was insignificant. Now he was the one left with nothing. I took a slow breath. "That's not my problem, Ryan." He let out a bitter chuckle. "You really don't care anymore, do you?" I met his gaze, my expression calm. "No, I don't." And with that, I turned and walked away. In the weeks that followed, the fallout was swift. Word spread about Ryan's affair. His friends distanced themselves, his colleagues turned their backs. Even Elaine, who had spent years treating me like I was beneath her, had to face the whispers and judgment of the very people she used to impress. As for me, I started over. I found a new home, one where Lucas could grow up without tension or manipulation. I focused on rebuilding my life, on rediscovering the happiness that had been stolen from me. One evening, as I sat on the porch watching Lucas play, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: peace. I had fought for my freedom, for my son's future, and I had won. The past no longer had power over me. I was finally free. The day the house was finally sold, I stood outside for a moment, watching as the movers loaded As I packed the last of my things into the truck, I reflected on the years I had spent in that house. Years of love, pain, and struggle. It had been a battlefield, a place where I had fought for my dignity, my son, and my freedom. And now I was walking away. Lucas tugged at my hand, his bright eyes looking up at me. "Mama, where are we going?" I knelt down beside him, brushing his hair back gently. "Somewhere new, baby. Somewhere just for us." He giggled, completely unbothered by the change. At 2 years old, he didn't understand the weight of what we had just left behind, but I did. As I stepped into my car, ready to drive towards the future of my own making, I felt something deep inside me shift. I was free. The new apartment wasn't as big as the house, but it was ours. It was warm, safe, untouched by the ghosts of the past. Lucas had his own little space filled with books and toys, and I had something I hadn't had in years: peace. The first few days were surreal. I kept expecting Ryan to walk through the door, expecting Elaine's voice to cut through the silence with her usual criticisms, but they never came. Instead, I filled my time with something else: rebuilding. I poured my energy into the coffee shop, the place that had always been my escape. It was more than just a business. It was a place where I felt like me again. The familiar hum of the espresso machine, the smell of fresh pastries, the laughter of customers, it was healing. I was no longer just someone's wife, someone's daughter-in-law. I was Amelia. Weeks passed, and then one evening, as I was locking up the shop, I heard a voice I hadn't expected to hear again. "Olivia." I turned slowly, my stomach twisting. It was Ryan, but he wasn't the man I had once known. He looked defeated. His clothes were wrinkled, his hair unkempt. His usual arrogance was replaced with something else: desperation. For a long moment, we just stared at each other. "You shouldn't be here," I said, my voice calm but firm. He let out a shaky breath. I just needed to see you, to talk." I crossed my arms. "About what?" He swallowed hard, looking away for a moment before forcing himself to meet my gaze. "I lost everything, Olivia. My job, my reputation, even my parents. They don't want anything to do with me now that they've lost their precious social standing." I didn't say anything. I just watched him, waiting. He took a small step closer. I was an idiot. I threw everything away. I should have fought for you, for us. I don't know what I was thinking. I sighed, shaking my head. You were thinking about yourself, Ryan, like you always have. His face twisted with something that looked like pain. Please, Olivia. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I have nothing left. I need help. I felt a flicker of something, pity maybe. A small part of me remembered the man I had once loved, the father of my child, but it wasn't enough. I stepped forward, my voice steady. Ryan, you made your choices, and now you have to live with them. I'm not responsible for saving you from the consequences of what you did. Filled with something raw, maybe regret, maybe realization. I don't know how to fix this, he whispered. I exhaled slowly. You can't. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. And then finally he nodded, his shoulders sagging. He had nothing left to say. I turned and walked away, leaving him standing there in the cold. That evening, as the sun began to set, I sat on the balcony of my new apartment, watching as the sky turned shades of gold and pink. Lucas sat beside me, his tiny fingers wrapped around mine. Look, Mama, he pointed at the sky, grinning. It's so pretty. I smiled, squeezing his hand. Yes, baby, it is. For the first time in years, I wasn't afraid of what came next. I wasn't trapped. I wasn't waiting for someone to change, to love me the way I deserved. I was free. And as I watched the sun dip below the horizon, I knew this was just the beginning.